Luo Feng's initiative to ambush true god-level powerhouses for accumulating military merits seemed truly insane. After joining the army in the new instance, the Jinji world, he immediately faced a life-and-death mission, accumulating enough military merits by collecting the bodies of true gods to survive. In Luo Feng's hometown, the primitive universe, true gods were essentially the strongest beings in the cosmos. Although Luo Feng had a record of killing the strongest beings in the cosmos, it was done using the dangerous environment of the cosmic sea and not by his own hands. Now, in an unfamiliar environment, without anyone to rely on, Luo Feng began to act recklessly. In the original work, although Luo Feng only had the attack power of a 7th-tier cosmic lord, with his mechanical treasures, his attack power could rival even a 10th-tier being. The extraordinary aspect of these mechanical treasures lay precisely in this ability, enabling effects that traditional techniques couldn't achieve. Recognizing Luo Feng's potential, the captain of the army believed that given enough time, Luo Feng could rapidly enhance his strength and earn military merits. The captain realized that if he couldn't become a true god before the next reincarnation level task, Luo Feng might be the key to his survival. Meanwhile, the 5 true gods from Xianyu Mountain were astonished by Luo Feng's combat prowess. They believed that once Luo Feng became a true god, he might even match up against void true gods with the help of his mechanical treasures. The void true gods, communicating high above the 9 smoke marsh, praised Luo Feng's close combat evasion skills, considering his close combat techniques unparalleled. Luo Feng's strength and potential gained recognition from the void true gods, who believed that given enough time, he might even become a titled powerhouse. Luo Feng performed remarkably on the battlefield of true gods. Not only did he complete catastrophic level missions, but he also collected a large number of true god samples such as blood, scales, and fur, laying a solid foundation for his path to godhood. At the same time, a prolonged battle was unfolding in the mysterious location of the 9 Smoke Marsh. True gods from the 9 Smoke Marsh and Xianyu Mountain, in a fierce fight for territory and glory, engaged in intense combat. However, behind the scenes, 2 cunning figures observed the battlefield, namely Luo Feng's captain and Luo Feng himself. These 2 lawmasters were not allies. Luo Feng was a lone wolf. Yet, their goals were aligned. None wanted to truly engage in battle, but only to steal the bodies of true gods on the battlefield. This behavior undoubtedly provoked the true gods, but they paid no heed, focusing solely on completing the military mission. As the battle continued, the number of true god bodies increased, and Luo Feng grew more anxious. They knew that once the bodies were collected, their opportunity would vanish. However, they didn't act rashly, as exposure would lead to being surrounded by countless true gods, almost ensuring their demise. The true gods were a whole level stronger than lawmasters, and being besieged would mean certain death. At this moment, the true gods from the 9 Smoke Marsh and Xianyu Mountain decided to temporarily cease the battle and each sent a true god to collect the fallen bodies. This left the other members of Luo Feng's team feeling desperate, knowing that failure to obtain true god bodies meant failure to complete the military mission, resulting in death. Luo Feng had been observing the battlefield and noticed a true god of an octopus-like creature with a long neck and covered in scales, assigned to collect bodies. This true god's performance in battle was not outstanding, and he didn't even have true god-level battle armor. Luo Feng calculated in his mind that if he could catch this true god when his strength dropped by 20%, he was confident he could kill him instantly in a very short time. So Luo Feng began to closely monitor the movements of this octopus-like true god, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the vast war raged on, with millions of lawmasters falling in battle, it was not just a war, but also a brutal selection process. Only those lawmasters who survived the ordeal could possibly break through to become the legendary true gods. In this chaotic battlefield, everyone fought for survival. On the edge of the battlefield of true gods, the captain and Luo Feng lurked separately, waiting for the right moment to strike. Although the captain looked down on his subordinates, he understood that their united force could unleash tremendous power and wouldn't easily abandon them. Meanwhile, Luo Feng observed in secret, preparing to act at a critical moment. A true god of an octopus-like creature roamed the battlefield, his strength already diminished because he lacked true god-level battle armor. He was of lower status among the true gods and yearned for a piece of true god battle armor, constantly scavenging for opportunities to snatch it. However, true god battle armor was extremely precious, and even if there was an opportunity to obtain it, successfully seizing it was difficult. The captain anxiously observed the battlefield, knowing that if there was only one enemy, the eight-legged beast true god, he could use his mechanical treasures to battle. However, this was a battlefield of true gods, fraught with danger. Meanwhile, Luo Feng calmly locked onto the position of the eight-legged beast true god, calculating their distance from each other, preparing to strike at the optimal moment. He patiently approached the battlefield, moving slowly to avoid detection by the enemy. After more than 3 days, he finally entered the battlefield, waiting for the approach of the eight-legged beast true god. Luo Feng continuously gathered his strength while waiting, his thoughts completely focused on killing the eight-legged beast true god. This absolute concentration allowed his potential to burst forth. He knew that in a life-and-death battle, the instinct for survival would converge all his thoughts, unleashing astonishing power. Finally, the opportunity Luo Feng had been waiting for arrived. The eight-legged beast true god drew closer, and Luo Feng's eyes lit up instantly. From a static state, he erupted with incredible speed and divine power, unleashing the first and second volumes of annihilation, the most powerful skill he had cultivated over 8 million epochs. The true god, surprised, turned his head to see a huge blade shadow with ferocious momentum descending upon him. Luo Feng's attack was swift and precise. He aimed to kill this true god in the shortest time possible. With many true god bodies on him, he had enough to exchange for a huge amount of military merits. The words of Earth Lord Luo Feng made even the stellar level 9 tier powerhouse burst into tears. What could have caused such a reaction? Nowadays, Luo Feng, inheriting the property of teacher Hu Yanbo, opened the first account of Hu Yanbo in the Cosmic Galaxy Bank. Not only did he spend 30 trillion to purchase the Earth and become its lord, but he also spent a huge sum to buy 8 stellar level 9 tier slaves. When the 8 stellar level 9 tier slaves stood before Luo Feng, their imposing presence was quite shocking. Who could forget the first time Luo Feng saw stellar level 9 tier slaves under the leadership of Gao Shengwei? Gao Shengwei's legs trembled, and he could barely stand. Luo Feng could even feel a pressure emanating from the stellar level 9 tier powerhouse. At that time, Luo Feng was sweating coldly. Now, using the power of money, Luo Feng purchased stellar level 9 tier slaves. They stood proudly, waiting for their master's orders. Unlike other slave owners, Luo Feng's background made him resentful of the slave system. Weak earthlings were at risk of becoming slaves before powerful races. Therefore, Luo Feng disliked the title of master. In Luo Feng's eyes, these slaves were his little brothers. Luo Feng hoped these slaves would call him boss. This way, when they went out, it would be like a boss leading a group of underlings, giving him great face. Luo Feng treated the slaves well. Now, with Luo Feng's family taken hostage, facing a life-threatening crisis, Luo Feng needed the power of these stellar 9 tier slaves to rescue his family and important personnel from the 5 major nations. As long as he successfully rescued the hostages and strengthened his power in the future, when Luo Feng no longer needed the protection of these slaves, he would remove the chips from their bodies and restore their freedom. They had never seen such a good slave owner. One of the slaves even knelt down on the spot, expressing willingness to follow Luo Feng to the death. Of course, there were also stellar level 9 tier powerhouses who, upon hearing Luo Feng's words, were moved to tears. Everyone wondered when Luo Feng would no longer need the protection of these slaves and when they would regain their freedom.